Hello, everyone, and happy Wednesday. My name is Alessandra Tino, and I am the Training and Education Specialist at Truxel CDI. I want to welcome you and thank you for joining our Projection Alternatives for the 21st Century Classroom. It will be myself and my colleague Wil Benham from Maxell who will be presenting with you today. We just want to take a moment to say thank you again for joining, and I'm just going to do a quick overview and agenda of what we're going to go through today. If you have not already had the option to do so, please take a moment to fill out the poll questions that are on your screen. We're going to leave that up for about another quick moment before closing it. I've just quickly introduced myself. We're going to talk about the new Truxel CDI and our merger and what we're able to offer, including great AV webinars like we're hosting today. I will introduce you to my colleague Wil Benham from Maxell, and he'll be going over the history of visual equipment in classrooms, why projectors, who is Maxell overall, their One Vision Kids program, and then at the end we'll do a Q&A. If at any point you do have any questions, please feel free to use the chat or the Q&A box on your screen. We'll be checking both of those, and then at the end we'll spend quite a bit of time going through any additional questions you may have. So I'm just going to quickly end the poll. Thank you for everyone who has taken a moment to fill that out. Perfect. So Truxel CDI, we are newly merged together and are really excited to be the new EdTech Solutions powerhouse. Our main focus is about building classrooms of tomorrow, but today. Working together with both companies allows us to have such great relationships with over 500 technology partners, and together we've reached over 7 million students across North America. As part of that, some of our classroom technology and services include AV essentials like the webinar we're going to be going over today, one-to-one learning, collaborative learning services, as well as STEM, school asset management, campus safety, integration and installation of technology in the classroom, as well as additional Truxel and CDI services. So I'd like to introduce Wil Benham, who's going to be going over and really talking about projections in the 21st century classroom. So Wil, you can go ahead and share your screen.
Thanks, Alessandra. How are you? How's everybody doing this morning? I'm making sure that you can see my screen here.
It is loaded. Perfect.
We are there. Perfect. So again, thanks everyone. My name is Wil Benham. I am with Maxell, formerly Hitachi, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a few. But first I want to go back and talk a little bit about my history, how I ended up in the AV world. In 1985, I graduated from Arizona State University with a degree in elementary education with an emphasis in science. And in 87, I accepted my first position as a junior high science teacher and walked into the classroom and determined right away that it needed some updating. Let's just put it that way. And I spent the next 13 years in the classroom, either teaching, again, middle school science, which would be 7th and 8th grade. I did teach some math courses along the way. During that time, I became very involved with technology on our campus, was one of the first people to receive a Macintosh computer in my classroom and be able to integrate that into my daily teaching activities. As well as I took the role of the AV specialist on our campus, and I'll talk a little bit about what that entailed here shortly. But again, 13 years in the classroom. After those 13 years, I jumped over to the district office where I became a tech liaison, basically a trainer in our district for all of our district staff, both teachers and administrators, on how to use the technology that we were starting to implement and see more and more in the classroom on a daily basis. During that time as the instructional technologist, I met up with the the company that was doing quite a bit of the installs, the integration of the technology in our classrooms, and decided that I had spent my time in the classroom and in the public sector, and thought, man, this is a unique time to enter the realm of AV in the classroom. And 2 weeks later, I was employed by the company and became a K-12 sales associate for one of the largest integrators here in Arizona. And for the next 10 years with them, helped roll out some of the technology we're going to talk about today to all of the classrooms, many of the districts here in the state of Arizona. And after 10 years with them, I again felt the need to move on, and left them in 2016, joined Hitachi, which is now Maxell, and have been the West Regional Manager for Hitachi for the last 3.5 years. I'm going to talk today a little bit about my experience of what I've seen, the morph in the classroom over these last 20 plus years, from what I walked into in 1987 to what teachers walk into today. I know that many of you are, if you're in the tech realm at your school district, you're probably very familiar with those changes along the way. But I'll just kind of go over a brief history of the classroom, and again, what we see now, and maybe a little bit of what we foresee in the future. If you have any questions along the way, please stop, ask. I'll try and respond to those questions, or have Alessandra help me with responding to those questions. She'll probably let me know when they pop up. But if there's nothing else, we're just going to go ahead and get started. Again, some photos that you see here on the screen are what you might see in a typical classroom today when teachers walk in, with projectors being used in multiple different ways in the classroom. I will start by saying that wasn't always the way it was. Here's some photos of, and I laugh as I pulled up some of these photos. I swear that many of them could have come from my first classroom back in the day, whether it be a chalkboard or a blackboard, as you've seen. The infamous overhead projector, which had me go home with red and blue and green stains on my hand from the pins that we would use on those overheads, to the small tube television, the 35-inch, if we were lucky to get one of those that we would have at the front of the classroom. Early technology might involve a tubed television installed like you see in a couple of these photos. Of course, the 16mm film, as well as the film loop projector. Again, many of the things that I would have experienced in my classroom in 1987. I can tell you that I did not have a television when I first walked into the classroom. The only means that I had of sharing information with my students was either that 16mm film, a film loop projector, and or the overhead projector that you see in the photos. Back in those days, a lot of what you see here is what I would have used in my classroom to teach students. And that would have been, I know that most of you can remember the charts that teachers would pull down with the maps that were out of date the day they were produced, or a map of the solar system. Again, math charts, science charts. Those were, again, in the day, the way teachers shared information with their students. And most of those were out of date. Textbooks. You'd probably be surprised to find that the majority of textbooks in the classroom these days are a thing of the past. Most schools have gone to a digital content, online content, and the textbooks that we knew and loved back in the day that would weigh our backpack down to 20 and 30 pounds as we were lugging in between classrooms were gone. And then, of course, again, I mentioned the tube televisions, the 16mm films, overheads. Hey, and then as we started to really morph into the future, we got the VHS players. So again, just some of the things in the 80s and 90s that I dealt with day in and day out in the classroom. I mentioned to you earlier that I was the AV liaison for our campus. So when a teacher requested a film, we had a video library at the district office that a teacher had to submit a request for that film 2 weeks in advance and hope that it worked in that no other teacher in the district. And keep in mind, I came from a district of over 15 schools. So you had to hope that no one else was using that individual film that you wanted to show your students during the 2-week period or the couple of days that you've thought about it in your classroom. And again, when we were requesting these, there was no email. You typically either had to phone the AV library assistant and ask if the film was available, or complete a form and turn it in. And again, if you weren't 2 weeks out, you weren't going to get it. So I joke that nothing made you happier as a student when you were a kid, when you walked into the classroom and saw the film projector set up in the back of the room. You knew you were going to be get to watch a movie that day. But the amount of effort that it went into to get that film for the teacher, not to mention just making sure that the 16mm film projector was available that day because no one else on campus was using it, or the TV that for the VHS was available because we only had 2 or 3 on a campus of 50 classrooms, and the trading and the sharing that had to go on. So again, late 80s, early 90s, that was the way AV was distributed to teachers and students, and it was a lot of work back then. Real quick, I'll just kind of go over some history that I found over the projection device and where it's been over time. Believe it or not, there was a, quote, projector that was developed back in the late 1600s using candle power. And you can see that in the upper left-hand corner. Of course, the overhead projector that we all know and love from our days as students and or teachers in the classroom. Again, that was the way that teachers typically shared notes or any type of information with students. Of course, you had the film strip projectors, whether it would be the small loop style that your students would get very excited about being able to advance the film every time it beeped from the cassette player that was playing the audio in conjunction with it. In the early 80s, we started to see the development of early LCD projectors. Those of you that may have purchased early televisions remember the large 3-gun or red, green, and blue guns that would produce the image. Those were the early LCD projectors in the classroom. Early overhead liquid crystal displays that we would use in conjunction with our whatever computer we had in the classroom. So instead of just having to write notes, we could actually share our computer screen with a overhead liquid crystal display and our overhead projector. It wasn't until the early 90s, late 80s, that we started to see the actual projector as we know it today enter into the classroom. And today's technology in the 2018 has grown leaps and bounds from when I was originally selling the product or installing it in my schools in the early 2000s. So again, just a real quick history of where projectors are, where they are now. Today's classrooms, you walk into many of today's classrooms and might see many of what you see photo-wise here on the screen. From a ultra short throw projector in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see possibly larger lecture halls with dual images and 2 projectors shooting 2 different images or simultaneous images at the same time, or different images. Again, just a couple of different installed projectors in the ceiling to get them up out of the way of the classroom. We still have quite a few schools that have projectors on carts that they bring in. And of course, that allows now for incredibly large content that can be shared with the students and make it easy for everyone in the classroom to see rather than looking at a small television at the front of the room. So again, just some photos of what you might see in the classroom today. So why projectors? What has changed in the classroom, and what impact has that made? I found a report from 2015 that basically states that 68% of teachers, which is up from 47%, use some form of digital content in the classroom to enhance or augment their classroom lessons. And that would be either videos, photos, internet content. And on the screen here, you just see some of the things that teachers use on a day in, day out basis. I would probably say it's dominated by YouTube. Picks for Learning is amazing. NASA, Discovery Education. Again, the screen is just a minute list of items that teachers may use day in and day out to augment their their classroom lessons. And I know 68% sounds low. Again, that was back in 2015. I can tell you that in a recent article in Tech for Learning, the teachers that were surveyed mentioned that 95% of teachers surveyed said they used some form of technology every day in the classroom. And again, that may or may not be in use with a projector in the classroom, but again, 95% of teachers surveyed mentioned that they use some form of technology in the classroom. So again, teachers need to use and share that video or those photos or that internet content to augment that lesson. What are they using? Well, the majority of folks are using projectors still to this day in the classroom, and they are just an incredibly valuable tool. Instead of using the old charts that we would use and the pull-down maps, teachers can now go on the web and find a interactive periodic table of the elements that they can share with their students and call up a particular element and talk in detail about that, or pull up a map of London and zoom in on that map and even show a street view of that map if they want to. They can talk about weather across the country or live charts. So again, these things that in the past students would have to be either relied on a chart from the teacher or a handout that the teacher gave them or something in a textbook is now live, immediate information that is impacting the students as it happens today. And the need for that to be projected up at the front of the classroom, large enough for the entire classroom to see, is just something that we see in almost every classroom across the US. So, as I mentioned a couple of times, I used to have a 27-inch TV in the front of the classroom that we would show students. It's truly, truly important that every student in the classroom has the ability to see that content that you're sharing with them at the front of the room as if they were in the front row. I can't tell you the number of times I go into a classroom in my current role and notice that the image at the front of the room is not large enough. It may be large enough for the students in the first couple of rows, but as I get back to row 3, 4, and 5, if I'm sharing a Word document or a PowerPoint or Excel spreadsheet, students in the back of the room are very likely not going to be able to see that unless I have a large enough image. Over on the right-hand side of this slide I'm sharing with you is something you may or may not be familiar with. It's a very common rule in the AV industry. It's called the 468 rule. And it basically just gives you an idea of how large of an image I need at the front of my conference room, my classroom, my auditorium, so that everybody in the room can see that content and make use of it. And it's just a simple math formula. If I'm using something along the lines of Excel or Word or CAD with smaller font size, I take 4 and multiply it by the height of my screen, and that X that it gives me, that number, is the furthest viewing distance students in the classroom can sit to see that image and make use of it. If I'm using a PowerPoint or a video, I can multiply by 6 because, again, maybe I'm not focusing on small text as much as I am in an Excel spreadsheet, and students further back in the room can still make use of that PowerPoint or video. And then if I'm showing a movie or slideshows or pictures, I can use that math and multiply it by 8, and the students can be further back in the room. Again, 468 rule. Over on the right-hand side, you'll notice a classroom that has, it appears to me to be about a 65-inch flat panel installed over a chalkboard at the front of the room. If I'm in row 1 or 2, I'm more than likely going to be able to benefit from that content that the teacher is sharing with the student. But again, as I'm in rows 4, 5, 6 of this classroom, that television is doing zero benefit for the students in those rows. So again, that 468 rule is really important. Size does matter in the classroom, and we want to make sure that all students can benefit. And I will tell you that projectors do a better job than anything, because from a cost of image size per cost, projectors still lead the industry in the ability to produce a large image at a very, very affordable cost. Here's an example of a recent install. I walked at a classroom at Norco Community College in California. It's one of their tutoring labs, and they've installed some of our Hitachi / Maxell ultra short throw laser projectors. They are shooting to a 110-inch diagonal, and basically it just gives the tutor the ability to walk up to the board, interact with the content that they're sharing with the student. The student then can go up to the board and solve whatever equation, or again, interact with the tutor. And these are just 4 individual tutoring stations that they've set up. I will tell you that this campus has, I think, 5 of these tutoring stations. They've become so popular and are used so frequently that they're going to be opening even more. If you wanted to, the teacher could even put their laptop content onto the screen and share a PowerPoint, again, an Excel, whatever lesson that they were talking about that day, and go over that with the student in this tutoring session. But again, major change from some of the images that you saw earlier with the classroom in the 80s and 90s to what we're starting to see now in the classroom. And again, just an amazing opportunity for students to benefit from technology in the classroom. So here are some other reasons why projectors continue to play a key role. Basically, I don't need to read this word for word. You guys can kind of make out my points here. But basically, innovation and improvements have significantly changed over the time span from when I was in the classroom in the late 90s, when we started to see projectors roll into the classroom, as to what we see now. I remember the first projectors we were installing at my school district were in the 1,000 to 1,500 lumen range. Nowadays, most schools are going to tell you that a minimum 3,000 lumen brightness is what they're going with in most of their classrooms. Also, I might expect a lamp to last 1,000 to 1,500 hours. Our latest model that we've just released for the classroom has a 6,000 hour lamp rated in standard mode and 12,500 in eco mode. So the lifespan of projectors has significantly changed over time. Again, brightness continues to increase as cost continues to go down. Those 1,500 lumen projectors that I originally installed in my district, we were paying somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000 a piece for those units. Now a school district could be expected to pay somewhere in the $500 to $600 range for a 3,800 lumen. And again, our model includes a 5-year lamp warranty, so they wouldn't even have to worry about replacing lamps for 5 years in some of our newer units. And then again, we've got those larger opportunities at schools, whether it be a cafeteria or a gymnasium or a lecture hall, that require much larger, much brighter projectors. We have options for that as well. But again, as I mentioned earlier, projectors still play a key role in there because they can produce a much larger image at a much less cost than anything else that's out there in the industry right now. Solid state, laser. You may or may not be familiar with the changes from lamp to laser-based models. Laser is making a huge impact in the projector industry right now. I would especially say in the higher ed, where they have a little bit more funding, because again, some of the solid state units are a little bit pricier, although I will tell you that our ultra short throw model that you're looking at here is very popular and doing very well in the K-12 realm. The key advantage here is it's got a 20,000 hour light engine. 20,000 hours in a school environment is forever. I usually do the math for my school, the folks that I work with, that schools are typically 180 days long. If a district is using, or if a teacher's using the projector 5 hours a day, that's about 900 hours a year that they would expect a projector to be in use. So I usually tell schools the average usage of a projector in the classroom is somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500 hours per year. God forbid the teacher doesn't leave it on 24 hours a day. And I know that all of you have seen that happen at your school at one time or another. Cool thing is we have in all of our projectors, we have the ability to schedule on and off times so that shouldn't ever happen. But again, laser technology is making a huge impact in the industry as we speak. All of our units include a 5-year, 20,000 hours. So there should be no need to worry about replacing or any type of issue with that unit for 5 years. And last, I wanted to talk a little bit about the ultra short throw, or the impact of LCD panels that we're starting to see in the classroom. I know a lot of districts are starting to look at 65-inch, 75-inch, 80 to 85-inch panels at the front of the classroom as opposed to a projector. I've stated it multiple times already. You need to be concerned about the size of that image at the front of the classroom. If you're putting a 70-inch panel at the front of a 50-foot long classroom, not every student in that classroom is going to be able to benefit from that unless you bring them up as a small group and all gather around that flat panel. But I will tell you that majority of my junior high classrooms were never set up that way. So ultra short throw projectors provide a huge advantage over LCD panels in that I can produce up to 130-inch diagonal. If I'm shooting to a standard whiteboard, and I can do that, use the whiteboard as my screen, I can get a 95-inch diagonal on a standard 4-foot high whiteboard by mounting my projector just above the whiteboard. And again, a 95-inch diagonal is much larger than the 70, 75, or 80-inch panels that we're seeing, and it's at a fraction of the cost of those panels. It also provides a better viewing angle, reduced glare. Again, I mentioned a significant cost advantage, and more than anything, from the former teacher folks, they do not want to give up their whiteboards. That is the holy grail of a classroom. Do not take my whiteboard away from me. And by putting a 80-inch panel right smack dab in the middle of a classroom, you've just pulled that much whiteboard space from the front of the classroom, and I will tell you that teachers will not be happy with you. Real quick, again, go back and talk a little bit about history of those projectors. Your parents' projector, back in the day, in the early 2000s, late 90s, I might expect to put a 2,000 lumen unit in. The lamp might expect to last 1,000 to 2,000 hours. Schools might expect to pay $300 for a lamp for those units. But again, it was the best option for the classroom because it gave a larger image for larger spaces. Today, most schools are going to be buying 3,500 lumen units. They're a smaller form factor, less expensive. The lamps are rated at 10,000 hours as opposed to the 1,000 to 2,000 hours. Solid state, if they go laser, it's even longer at 20,000 hours. Lamp prices have dropped to a point where most projectors these days, you can buy a lamp for under $100. Again, and then just some of the performance that you can expect to use with those. Your standard classroom install, whether it be on the ceiling, in a cart, or ultra short throw on the wall, and or larger displays like auditoriums, cafeterias, gymnasiums, and so forth. So again, just some history of projectors and how they've changed over time. I wanted to share some data with you as to the number of projectors that are continuing to be sold into the North America market year over year. This chart shows from 2016 to 2019 the number of projectors that have been sold in the number of millions. So you can see that in 2016, 17, and 18, the numbers had slightly started to decline. But in 2019, we saw an uptick, and I can tell you that 2020 is on path to do the same. The different projectors that you see on this chart, the light blue at the top are the short throws. Those are the ones you might expect to see on a 3-foot pole hanging out in the middle of off the front wall of a classroom. Again, very few of those in the industry. Ultra short throws, the ones that mount against the wall, produce a 130-inch image, less than 18 to 20 inches. And again, pretty impactful there. And then you've got your high output or your high bright units that have optional lenses. And then we've got some higher bright units that would be found a lot in our higher ed. We call it our collegiate line, 5,000 lumens and above. And then of course the volume series, which is where the K-12 market tends to fall, and the number of units that you still see there. So the main purpose for this slide was to show you that projectors are still very impactful in the industry, and a ton of them are being sold day in and day out. That's kind of the history of projectors, where they're at, the impact they've made on the classroom. I'm going to finish up by talking really quickly about Maxell and Hitachi. You may or may not recognize this ad if you've been around for any length of time. Probably one of the most iconic ads of all time, the blown away guy from Maxell. Those of you that are old enough to remember the cassette players, obviously Maxell played a huge role in cassettes and VHS tapes, but they've done a lot of other things throughout their time. They're actually a battery company and a huge consumer electronics company as well. So our new ad looks a little bit like that, being blown away with a projected image or a projector and the light coming from the image. And as I've mentioned a couple of times, Hitachi has made the transition to Maxell. Hitachi, as you know it, has been in the industry for 20 plus years, making an impact in the digital media division with projectors, again, for 20 plus years in the K-12 market. And about a year ago, a decision was made by Hitachi Corporate to have Maxell, which is a Hitachi company as well, a sister company, start to take over the reins of the digital media division, the projector division, because the Hitachi itself was morphing into more of a social innovative company, and some of the consumer and other brands that they've had as part of Hitachi have been branched off. And again, Maxell is taking over the projector division. In fact, they've been designing and building our projectors in their factories for the last 5 years. And we've seen a lot of growth from Maxell. It is simply a name change from Hitachi to Maxell. All of the people, all of the product, all of the support is all the same. Again, just a simple name change. We will officially launch that in April 1st, and as of October 1, we will forever be known as Maxell moving forward. But again, the thing that I need you guys to understand is the legacy of outstanding design, precision optical performance, tremendous reliability, support that you have come to know from Hitachi are going to continue to move forward under the new Maxell name. And then just really quickly, some other things about why you might want to go with Maxell. Our projectors have been specifically designed to enhance the experience by delivering vivid colors and bold graphics. We work closely with our schools and partners to develop projectors that are meaningful and reliable. We bring our engineers over from Japan consistently to meet with K-12, higher ed, corporate folks, and talk to them about what's important, what do they see, and we make changes and modifications to our projectors based on those meetings. And again, last but not least, we continue to offer the industry-leading best price, best programs, and then of course warranty and support. We've talked a lot about K-12. That's not all we focus on. We have a large role in the higher ed realm. We play a large, significant impact on the corporate world, large venues, house of worship. Again, we've got stuff from 3,000 lumen projectors that you might see in a classroom to a 10,000 lumen laser that you might see in a lecture hall or a large auditorium or in a house of worship setting, and everything in between. And then I just want to wrap up today and talk a little bit, since most of the folks on the call are probably K-12, our One Vision program, it's specifically designed for the K-12 market. And we have some special offerings that we do as part of that. What you see here are some of our K-12 units, our projectors that you might find in the K-12 market. And notice that all of the laser units listed in the top have a 5-year warranty on them. You will not have to worry about replacing that unit for 5 years. And a simple call to 1-800-Hitachi or 1-800-Maxell, get on the phone with our service team. Will help you to resolve any issues that you see there. Below are some of our entry-level classroom models that you would see hanging from the ceiling. And again, our minimum brightness on these units is 3,800 lumens, and we go up to 4,500 lumens. Again, a standard 3-year warranty, which is pretty standard for the projector itself, but a 5-year, 10,000-hour lamp warranty. Schools with tight maintenance and operation budgets that can't find the money to buy lamps won't have to worry about it for 5 years with these units. and I will tell you the image quality on these is amazing. Just great, great images from these units. Our team, there's 4 sales reps that cover the entire US region, and the folks from CDI have all of our contact information and can share that with you. But again, I just wanted to show you our team. We have an engineer on the East Coast and an engineer on the West Coast to help support our customers and our partners in the field with any type of technology issue that we may have. Again, that's our team. That's who we are. And last but not least, I just want to share with you really quickly our website. And then if you have any questions at all, I'll help answer those and can fire some answers your way. But again, our website is www.maxellproav.com. And as soon as my projector jumps over it, it's pretty straightforward. Over here at the top, you can find a listing of all of our products, from our professional, larger installation models, our collegiate, higher bright that you might see in some of the higher ed. Here's all of our classroom and conference room models, ultra short throw interactive, that allow teachers to use pens to interact with those projectors at the front of the room. And then our entry level, and of course we have a brand new product, which is our lecture capture system, which we're starting to see a lot of questions and momentum with, which is basically the ability to record, stream, and share lessons via this box that can be installed and integrated with the camera. So again, that's our website, pretty straightforward. That's my presentation for today. Alessandra, I hope I covered what you guys had asked me to cover, and if there's any questions, please fire them my way.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Wil. That was great. I know the CDI team from the Truxel CDI merge is really excited to be able to have these new AV offerings, and especially be able to work with Maxell. Our team here is happy to answer any questions as well to those that are on the webinar. But if there's anything that's comes to mind right now, please feel free to jump on. Actually, there's one that just came in, and they want to know a little bit more about the wireless casting and if it is available.
So absolutely, we can. All of our units can cast wirelessly. We have a wireless dongle that you can include in our projectors, and it would end up putting the projector on the network, and then you can cast pretty much any type of device, iOS, Mac, PC, to our projectors. It does a great job, and I will tell you that some folks that want a higher refresh rate video, if they're going to share video, our refresh rate on our wireless, as well as anybody in the industry from a projector standpoint that's using wireless casting, is probably not at the level that a true high motion video would require. And there are lots of third-party devices out there that you can partner with projectors. We are a projector company. We focus on making quality projectors, and we do that. Again, we do have the ability to wirelessly cast. It's pretty straightforward and very easy. But again, if you're looking for some higher refresh rate, third-party devices are out there that do it far better. But again, I've got many folks out there that are using our projector and casting. My wife, in fact, teaches at Mesa Public Schools here in Arizona. And she has a Lenovo laptop that she walks around the classroom, and she can cast that laptop to her projector at the front of the room and share whatever content that she has, whether it's a PowerPoint, Excel, Microsoft Word, the internet. She can cast that wirelessly by walking around the classroom without any issue at all.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that answer. And then is there any other questions? Feel free to type them into the chat or in the Q&A section. Well, I will say, when you had the history of, I guess, just visual equipment in the classrooms and seeing the we used to have the old transparencies and trying to copy down what the teacher was saying before they moved on to the next one, and then they put their arm over and it gets smudged. Brought back a lot of memories from my classroom days.
I had stacks and stacks and stacks of the clear acetate with notes that I had written days in advance, or previous days that we'd always have to go back and shuffle through and find what we covered. And again, that is so changed. I laugh that teachers today, that teachers walk into the classroom today have no clue what we dealt with.
Oh yeah. Any other questions from anyone on the webinar? Just doing a check here. Okay, well, if there isn't anything else, I just want to say thank you, Wil, for your presentation. I think it was wonderful just to see how projectors are being used today, how things are really changing in the classroom, and what Maxell has to offer. We will be sending out a recording of the webinar today to everyone who has participated, as well as contact information on who you can contact if you do have any questions that do come up later. So again, thank you so much. Thank you, Wil, and we hope everyone has a wonderful Wednesday and afternoon.
Thanks, guys.